Hello everyone, Tactical Lich here, and welcome back to another Total Warhammer multiplayer battle. Today we have a very close game as I was playing as the Bretonnians, testing out a Bretonnian army build against the Skavens, and then somehow the battle ended up way closer than I expected. For the army builds here, a front line of peasant mobs backed up by a line of men-at-arms mixed in with battle pilgrims. On the flanks there we have a ton more mobility, knight errant plus 2 more knights of the realm. Both sides are basically the same here, so 6 units of cavalry on both flanks, and now the knight errant, a 7th unit of mobility. Just basically trying to rush my opponent with my sheer number of melee troops. For the leadership here, we have King Louen coming in with his full loadout except the beloved son of Bretonnia, supported by no healing, but the Damsel of Heaven, since King Louen has his own healing, and I decided to mix things up a bit, coming in with the Uranon's Thunderbolt in case I need to blast away weapons crews, and then we have the Curse of Midnight Wind to reduce enemy stats, plus the Wind Blast to clear out Skaven infantry. On the other side of the battlefield, we have the Skaven box, a front line of Clanrat spears mixed in with Skaven slave spears, a lot of anti-large chaff. Providing a bit more mass and armor piercing, we have the Red Ogres here, one of them, the Pit Fighters of Hell Steep. At the back there, Plate Claw Catapult, ready to clear out the peasant infantry, guarded by an Ixchia's Triads. In the center of the box, we have a weapons team guarding the single entities, the Warp Grinder crew, which is a very good pick against the Bretonnian Seismic Snare to pin down my mobility, and then follow up with a Warp Quake to drain away their health. Now, for the characters here, we have Gorich coming in with his full loadout or almost full loadout. Basically a very strong piece of modern monster, providing a ton of armor piercing. He is supported by the Packmaster, who is coming in with Shock Collar plus the Skaven Brew for those melee attack stat buffs. He also has his passive AoE heal running with the pack for the modern monsters. Great for sustaining the modern monsters, but unfortunately he is not on a brute horror, so his survivability in the late game without that regeneration would be kinda low. For the Lord, we have Lord Scroak himself with his usual items. Rod of Corruption for single entity targeting, and the Libra Bubonicus, great for draining blobs of enemy units. As for spells, we have Pestilent Breath to deal with the lightly armored peasant infantry, Wither to reduce my knight's armor, and of course Clanrat Summon, the Vermintide spell. Always great to have extra bodies either to tank hits or tie down enemies. On the far corner, a single wolf rat with poison, ready to pounce on the peasant's back. That's basically it for the army builds. Without further ado, let's get the battle started.
As usual, the Ratman over here has the tech advantage with the Plate Claw Catapult, so the peasants will be rushing forward as the Plate Claw Catapults try to bombard my front line, but that's fine because they are peasants and their job is to die for the knights. They are using their lives to buy time for my Knight of the Realm and Knight Errant to move into flanking position and perhaps try to break through the Skaven defenses. Now we'll be going into even more fast forward here as the marching phase takes quite a bit of time as my lines of peasants are suffering heavy casualties from my opponent's firepower. Due to the lack of backline, the wolf rats are having a hard time selecting the target and will be hanging back for now. As my army closes in, I'm trying to deliver some cheeky charge maneuvers. Skaven slaves with spears, despite their anti-large, does not have charge defense, so it is perfect for me to just throw in some knight errant and break them apart with that charge impact damage. The peasants will be chasing them for a little bit there, but then the red ogres counter charge and will be stopping the peasants right in their tracks. I'm trying to go for a flanking maneuver here, dumping in a ton of knights, knight errant, 2 knights of the realms, trying to break through the Skaven defenses and get on top of the Plate Claw Catapult, but the Pit Fighters of Hell Steep plus the Warp Grinder's snaring ability, and on top of that more Skaven infantry piling in. What was a glorious charge turned into a slaughter as the knights are stuck knee-deep in Skaven bodies. Especially with Lord Scroak the Packmaster and Gorich himself supporting this fight. He was even trying to fight King Louen for a bit there, but that also drew away a lot of Skaven's resources from the right flank. I was able to exploit this opening, throw in some of my own Knights of the Realm on the other side. I have a lot of Knights after all, a ton of melee units overwhelming the Skaven positions, and that is exactly what's happening with the Plate Claw Catapults as they are now charged by the Knights of the Realm and King Louen himself. The Plate Claw Catapult is now shut down and my peasants have a little bit more freedom to operate as they are grinding through a ton of Clanrat infantry. Now back to the front line, the Red Ogres are standing kind of idly around the man-at-arms, giving the Knight Errant right next to them the opening to slip into the back lines. Of course, there are no more missile units for me to target, but they can deliver some rear charges if they are in the right position. For example, these Clan Spears have their back exposed and are perfect for a hammering charge from my Knights of the Realm. Yes, they are grinding through some of my knights, but their heavy armor means that they will be taking relatively less damage from their opponents, while the Knight of the Realm, who was trying to deliver the hammer charge, decided to pull back and go for another opportunity, where there is actually an anvil of Battle Pilgrims fixing the Skaven units in place, though the Knights of the Realm charge through their own infantry, so the damage isn't that substantial. King Louen is also diving down with Gorich in the fray. They are dueling each other here, but a bit of a curse of Midnight Wind. You never really see the spell. Reduce Gorich melee attack stats down to 46, which is not that impressive against a character like King Louen Kerr. So King Louen will be dishing out some pretty good damage against Gorich, especially his armor is further debuffed by the Curse of Midnight Wind, while the Peasant and the Clan Red infantry are just mixed in together, grinding each other down. Now, with my numbers advantage, weird to say that when we're talking about fighting against Skavens, my Peasant army with their numbers managed to overwhelm most of the Skaven position, and now I'm just pursuing the box of Skaven that is pretty much broken apart. You can see that there is no more uniform formation of the box, and I was able to isolate elements of the Skaven army. For example, here the Red Ogres are over chasing, allowing me to send in some Knights of the Realm with an impactful empty large charge, and these Red Ogres will be quickly whittled down by all these cavalry piling on top of them. You can see their HP is dropping rapidly. Not even the Packmaster is able to save them from all these Bretonnian knights. Now the Packmaster needs to regroup with this huge blob of Skaven infantry. The Warp Grinders are definitely a strong counter to my cavalry for now, as they have been spamming their abilities as much as possible, locking down my cavalry, which is partly why my initial charge on the other flank, on the Skaven left flank, failed, because some of my knights simply got locked in and unable to extract themselves. Now the Warp Grinders are still fighting and they're alive. Ixchus Triads, a very solid anti-large anti-armor infantry that can efficiently kill off knights. They are doing some pretty good work here, though the damage value isn't that great because they have been struggling to keep up with the faster moving knights. Knight Errant slamming in, trying to use my King Louen as a very tanky anvil, as my opponent pile all his units onto my lord and surround him. There's some pretty good shock damage, routed off some Clan Reds, but they themselves have been routed as well by the counter-attack of Lord Skroak and his minions. Gorich is still fighting, but the infantry support is running thin, as some of them are hit by a wind blast, and Gorich himself is running low on health. Especially unlike Throt, the Packmaster doesn't have any active heals, only a passive heal, so there is nothing really to sustain his hit points. The light armor of Skaven also means that they are quite vulnerable to my Damsel of Heaven's spells. The Curse of Midnight Wind is great for debuffing, but there's also Wind Blast, which can clear out large blobs of lightly armored chaff. And Ixchus Triads, despite their solid melee stats and pretty decent leadership for Skavens, they are quite susceptible to damage from spells due to their reliance on physical resistance. After all, the Triads are still Skaven infantry and are quite squishy. The Damsel of Heavens has been psycho-charging, managed to help King Louen snipe out Gorich. Of course, she's not the best melee fighter, so she won't stay for long. Instead, King Louen will be dropping down to fight Lord Skroak and the Packmaster. The Packmaster isn't on his Brute Horror mount, so he doesn't have any access to healing, and on top of that, he doesn't have the speed to catch up with my mounted characters. So they can't really do anything except going after my slower and easier to catch infantry. Now, Battle Pilgrims normally would trade great against the Skaven Triads, but this time they are debuffed by multiple effects. Their leadership, armor, and melee attack stats have been lowered, especially after losing their frenzy. So being overwhelmed by Skavens, they are indeed routed, but here comes another charge from some regrouped Knights of the Realm, but they are deadly locked down by the Seismic Snare from the Warp Grinders. Very timely cast from our opponent here, locking them down, draining their health away, and the remaining HP will be gone. So this means I have to rely on the rest of the infantry and some very tattered knights errant, not even the Knights of the Realm. So this is gonna be quite a tight finish as the balance of power is still dead even. Both sides have a relatively similar trip count for now. More battle pilgrims are joining the fray, engaging the Ixchius Triads, and King Louen on top of that is dropping a sort of Corone, debuffing the Skaven units. You can see their melee defense is down to 12 and they're actually bailing from this engagement. Not sure why, perhaps they're just trying to wait for the sort of Corone to wear off. Now it is the time for them to re-engage, but the leadership of the battle pilgrims is also stabilizing. Despite Lord Scroke still fighting in the middle of them, they are no longer affected by the discouraged effect. Perhaps Lord Scroke is no longer landing hits on the battle pilgrims now that his attention is focused on King Louen himself. If Scroke actually landed a hit on the battle pilgrims combined with the rear charge from the Ixchius Triads, they could have routed the battle pilgrims with that -10 leadership effect. It could have been really clutch as the battle pilgrims are barely holding on to this fight, providing some additional infantry support to my single entities. That might not seem much, but it still bought me more time to break off my opponent's remaining infantry, drop in another wind blast to whittle down the clan red spears. With the last battle pilgrims breaking, my remaining infantry are scattered all over, unable to support my characters. The Damsel of Heaven has been psycho-charging while King Louen is holding his ground. He does indeed have his self-healing ability, the Lady's Champion, providing that extra HP to tank away Lord Scroke's attack and the surrounding Skaven damage. There are more Ixchius Triad piling in. Some of them are actually the summoned version, the replicant version that doesn't do any damage. However, the real actual Ixchius Triads have the anti-large and armor piercing to put some hurt on King Louen. And you can see that King Louen has been suffering a bit. Not a lot though, as his Lady's Champion ability is recovering his HP. On top of that, King Louen has activated Stand Your Ground, blocking incoming attacks with extra melee defense, while he himself is punching back hard. Lord Scroke is taking a lot of damage indeed. He doesn't have the greatest melee defense. Yes, he has Frenzy, but that doesn't apply to his melee defense or his tankiness. And you can see that in a prolonged grind with a cycle charging from the Damsel of Heaven, Lord Scroke eventually was grind down by two superior melee combatants with those charge bonus. Army losses kicks in and that's it for the Skavens. GG to my opponent, who I believe is probably from an Asian region where I don't have the fonts in the game for their name. Either ways, this was a very close finish. The Knights of the Realm did some okay work here. Some of them managed to run down the plate claw catapults, did some really good damage, but overall, nothing too amazing. But as long as they got a charge on the lightly armored red ogres, they should be able to get some good damage, two of them earning back a chevron even. As for the Knights Errant, they didn't really do that much here as they do not have that kind of anti-large bonus like the Knights of the Realm and also have lighter armor. The peasant infantry didn't do much damage either, as they were just fighting Skaven chaff mostly, or getting bombarded by the plate claw catapult. Most of the work were done by King Louen Leonke himself. 3,500 gold worth of damage value, cutting down Gorich, cutting down the Packmaster, and cutting down Lord Scroke himself. He basically soloed all three Skaven characters himself. Now, of course, the Damsel of Heavens did some supportive measures as well, using the Curse of Midnight Wind to lower enemy stats and the Wind Blast to eliminate enemy infantry support. As for the Skaven army, they didn't really do too much with the Red Ogres here, fighting against Knights of the Realm. They do not have that kind of armor to mitigate the anti-large bonus and charge bonus of the Knights of the Realm. While the plate claw catapult got shut down quite early as the battle began, while the rest of the army here, Ixchius Triads, did some really good damage with their anti-large armor piercing, and the warp grinders, as I said before, very good against the Bretonnian cavalry with their snaring ability to lock down my mobility and then drain them away with the direct damage ability. Now, for the Wolf Rats with Poison, didn't do much damage. Same for the Skaven infantry, as they're just cheap chaff. For the single entities, Packmaster didn't do much damage. Gorich did some okay work, not the most amazing. And Lord Scroke definitely carried his own weight, just not quite enough to deal with the tanky healing of King Louen Leonke. And that's it for today's battle. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you want to see more Total War Warhammer multiplayer action, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.